Okay, it's 6 o'clock. So I'm going to declare the talk officially starting now, but people will still be entering the room. So if you are just arriving as I'm talking, you're very, very welcome. My name is Rebecca, and I am the project manager at for the Friends of Bennerley Viaduct. I am managing our National Lottery Heritage Fund funded project at the moment, which is called Bridging the Gap. And that's a project that's essentially taking over from a lot of the brilliant work that people like Kieran and many of our other the Friends of the Viaduct were doing sort of before I arrived, and carrying that work on and building a legacy for it into the future. And as part of that, we wanted to launch this programme of online talks so that people can find out more about the viaduct from the comfort of their own homes and from all around the country without necessarily having to travel. So it's brilliant to see you all here. Thank you for that. This is the first time we've done this, so if we do have any technical difficulties along the way, do bear with us. We are still learning, but hopefully everything's going to go smoothly. Now, one of the things I'm really aware of is that not everybody knows how Zoom webinar works. You might not have been to a Zoom webinar before. Now, if all you want to do is sit there and listen to the talk, that's absolutely fine. You're under no pressure to interact at all. We can't see you and we can't hear you. So feel free to get up and make a cup of tea or do anything else while Kieran's talking if you do want to do that. However, should you want to interact, there are two ways you can do that. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a bar with lots of different options in it. One of them says chat, and there's a speech bubble there. If you click that, a space will come up on the side of the screen where you can type. And if you type messages there, you will find that that we can see them, and other people in the webinar can see them as well. So if you want to say, oh, I've got some interesting information about this and share that, or you want to just point out sort of who you are and where you're from or anything like that, please do share that in the chat. When it comes to asking questions, the problem with the chat is that sometimes we might miss it because it goes by quite quickly if people are talking to each other. You'll also see there's a thing that says Q&A, and that's like two little speech bubbles next to each other. If you want to ask a specific question that you want Kieran to answer at the end, if you click on that Q&A, it'll bring up a little box where you can type in your question. And then I'll be watching that. And at the very end, we'll go through those questions and Kieran can answer them. We're not going to keep stopping midway through the talk to answer questions, but we will make time for them at the end. So hopefully that makes sense for everybody. If you do have any problems and you want to ask questions about sort of how the webinar is working, or you can't find something, if you can find the chat and type it in there, I'll be keeping an eye on that. So hopefully that makes sense for you all. We are going to be recording this. We're not going to record the bit where I'm sort of waffling on at the beginning, but we are going to record the actual talk. So if you think this talk's brilliant and you want to share it with people at a later date, we'll be sharing that link and showing people where they can find that another time. And I think that's all I have to say to you all. So I'm going to hand over to Kieran now. So some of you will know Kieran Lee. Some of you may not. So just in case you don't, Kieran has been the Community Engagement Officer at the Viaduct since, what year was it, Kieran, when you started?
Beginning of 2016.
Beginning of 2016, and has done all kinds of amazing work along the way. People often describe him as the face of Bennerley Viaduct. We are incredibly lucky that he is still staying on with us and doing some volunteering and some talks. And he was at the Viaduct today with a group of school children as well. So Kieran's done all kinds of amazing things. He's probably the best person I know to talk to you about the story of the Viaduct so far. I'm going to switch my camera off and my microphone off so you can't see or hear me while Kieran's talking, but I will still be here. So if anybody does mention anything in the chat, do let me know. And with that, I'll hand over to Kieran.
And I'm going to switch my phone off as well because it's just gone off, right? So, yeah, good evening, everybody. Delighted to be, able to tell you some of the stories about Bennerley Viaduct. Essentially, I'm going to be telling two different inspiring stories. And the first one is what makes the viaduct so special. And the second part of it, and it's linked, it's about this community that's absolutely rolled up its sleeves to make amazing things happen. I was in Cotman Junior School today, and the reception we received there was phenomenal. And it was the case of, what can we do for you? We'll make you some nesting boxes. We'll make you some bat boxes. You know, we want to be part of this project. And it was inspiring. And the kids were really interested in the viaduct. So for me, it's an absolutely stunningly beautiful structure, particularly at this time of the year when you get the mists and the fogs. It's gorgeous. It's the longest wrought iron viaduct in the British Isles. There's only one other one which is left, which is the Meldon in Devon, and that's got 6 spans, and this one has got 16. And on a global scale, there are very few wrought iron viaducts that are left. And so what we have at Bennerley, we're really fortunate to have something, a structure, which is not just nationally important, it's globally important as well. They stopped making wrought iron structures after the 1880s following the Tay disaster, and there's very few of them left standing in the world. And Historic England have described Bennerley Viaduct as a stunning example of the genius of British engineering. And when you are at the viaduct with the engineers, you really do realise that the people that designed it and made it, they were clever people. And I understand there's going to be the next presentation will be from one of the engineers who can actually go into the, you know, he can explain why this viaduct is such a fantastic example. It was one of many. And if you look at this picture here, the top left, you've got the Crumlin Viaduct, demolished in 1968. At one stage, it was the 3rd highest viaduct in the world. The Beela Viaduct in the Pennines, demolished in 1963. Dowry Dell in the West Midlands, demolished in 74. The Staithes Viaduct, demolished in 1960. There's only the Meldon and Bennerley left standing. So how come Bennerley has survived? And we'll come to that as we go through the actual presentation. How has this viaduct survived? But the actual story begins with coal. And if you look at the map on the left-hand side of the picture, you can see the little blue arrow, and that points to where Bennerley is, or the Erewash Valley is. And it's on the southern end of the coalfield, which stretches all the way north up to Leeds. But more significantly, it's on the western side of the coalfield. And on the western side of the coalfield, the coal is on the surface. So if you look at the plan on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see those coal measures, how as you move west, those coal measures come to the surface. If you go to Lincoln, which is what, 40 miles to the east of here, there's coal under Lincoln, but you've got to go 1,000 meters down to get the coal. So there's no coal mines in Lincoln. But in the Erewash Valley, the coal is actually on the surface. So there's been mining in the valley since the 13th century. But the development of the coal industry was limited by the difficulties transporting coal. But then in the Industrial Revolution, the demand for coal hugely increased. And in 1779, the Erewash Canal was built, and that allowed all the colliers, all the coal mines in the Erewash Valley to get that coal out to the Trent, out to the canal system, and out to the southern cities. And the Erewash Canal in its day was a wash with money. It was a really profitable concern. In fact, it was so profitable, a second canal was put through called the Nottingham Canal, which we call a top cut, and that went through in 1796. And the viaduct sits in between those 2 canals. And with those canals, there was a means of getting the coal out of the valley. So there was a huge expansion of the coal industry and the iron industry in the Erewash Valley. From the 1820s, you had the railways were developing, and Stockton to Darlington was the world's first public railway, which opened in 1825. And again, that was primarily to get the coal from the coalfields in Durham and the northeast out to the ports. And this railway enabled the northeastern coalfield to get coal down to the southern cities cheaper than we could from the Erewash Valley. And so the colliers in the Erewash Valley, they wanted a slice of this railway action. They've got the canals, but this was the new kid on the block. They wanted this technology to serve the valley. And so if you ever come to Eastwood, this pub is still here. It's in the middle of the island now, in the middle of a kind of traffic roundabout. But the sun in 1832, a number of businessmen, coal owners got together, and that was the birthplace of the Midland Counties Railway in 1832. And the Midland Counties Railway developed into the powerful Midland Railway Company. And they had lines stretching north up to Carlisle, south down to London, to Bristol, to Bath, to Swansea. But the centre of the Midland Railway Company was Derby. And whilst that was very, very prestigious for Derby to have this industry, which was right at the cutting edge of global railway development, it also, there were mixed blessings for the city of Derby as well, in that one railway company controlled the goods coming in and out of Derby. And a lot of the businesses in Derby were desperate to break that monopoly which the Midland Railway had. And the same applied to the Erewash coal owners. By this stage, they were served by the Midland Railway Company. But again, the railway company controlled the prices of the coal coming out of the valley. And coalfields further north could get their coal to the southern cities much cheaper. And further to the east, you had the Duke of St Albans on the Bestwood estate, who had millions of tons of coal onto his land, but no means of getting it away. So in 1872, the Great Northern Railway Company went to Parliament, and an Act of Parliament was passed to allow what was called the Derbyshire and Staffordshire extension. And it was built by the Great Northern Railway Company. And the next slide shows how this new railway, the red one, came and absolutely invaded what was Midland territory. There was huge rivalry between these railway companies, between the Midland and the Great Northern. And so you can see the Great Northern Railway from Nottingham out to Colwick, and then Gedling, Carlton, a line that goes up to Pinxton up the Erewash Valley, a line that went up to Heanor, Derby, Eggington Junction, and down to Burton-on-Trent. And the Midland had taken up all the nice, easy geographical routes. They took all the valley floors. This line here went completely against the grain of the land. So there were cuttings, there were embankments, there were tunnels. But the biggest engineering challenge of all was getting across the Erewash Valley, which is where the big blue arrow is. Now, normally what the engineers would do is they would construct something like this, a viaduct out of bricks or a viaduct out of stone. But just to the north of Bennerley Viaduct, there used to be a mine called Bennerley Mine. And before the 1870s, the mining companies didn't have to keep records of where all their kind of tunnels and passages went. And so when the engineers came to build Bennerley Viaduct, they knew the land underneath was honeycombed with mine workings, but they had no idea of the extent of those, that honeycombing. And they didn't feel they could build a viaduct like this because they didn't feel the land could support the weight. So they had to come up with a structure which was very light and very, very flexible. And they built this structure out of wrought iron. And all the engineering principles behind this viaduct is to have a structure as light as possible, and a structure that could move, and a structure that could flex. And it took them from start to finish 18 months to build this viaduct. All the parts came from Derby, and then they were assembled on the site using quite simple machinery like wooden A-frames and hoists. So again, lightness and flexibility. And the viaduct is what's called a floating structure. it just sits on these brick pier bases. It's not tied in any shape or form. And that's to allow the structure to move and to flex, you know, with both the trains going across, but also to, you know, if there's any kind of slippage or subsidence in the land, the viaduct would be able to manage that flexibility. So for 90 years, it carried coal, it carried iron ore to Stanton, it carried beer from Burton-on-Trent, it carried passengers. There used to be excursion trips from, you know, Ilkeston and Orsworth and Kimberley to Skegness for the day. You could get from Ilkeston to Derby in about 12 minutes. You could get to Nottingham in 15 minutes. So it was a line that was really well used. And there's another old image of a train coming off the viaduct and crossing the Erewash Canal. And you can see the old lock cottage at Stenson's Lock, which now is no longer there. When I do presentations in, you know, village halls, and you put this slide on and you mention beaching, you get all these boos and hisses because, as you know, Beeching in 1963, he wrote what's called the Beeching Report, which decimated the railways in this country. I've always been fascinated why it was called, you know, why Beeching carries the can for the decimation of the railways, when the true villain of the piece was the Transport Minister at the time called Ernest Marples. And Ernest Marples, he appointed Beeching, who was a chemist who knew nothing about railways at all. He appointed Beeching to literally to close down any railway that was possibly unprofitable, to close it. But Marples was also a shareholder in a company called Marples Ridgeway, well, he was the owner, and interested in developing motorways. So there was a real conflict of interest there. And he passed all his shares over to his wife and didn't declare an interest, and then got lots of the contract building motorways and flyovers. So Beeching, he gets stuck with the you know, the Beeching cuts, but the real villain of the piece was Marples, who was the Transport Minister, who, you know, curiously never gets mentioned, you know, when the Beeching cuts get mentioned. So the last passenger train, the whole line was recommended for closure. The last passenger train went over in 1964. The last goods train went over in 68. The tracks were lifted in 1969, which is when this picture was taken. And after that point, British Rail saw the viaduct as a liability. They had no further use for it. They didn't want the expense of maintaining it. So they wanted to see, you know, the viaduct demolished. And throughout the country, this is what happened. This is the Beela Viaduct up in the Pennines being demolished. And all that's left now is that little stub. If you look at the right-hand picture, that is all that's left of this magnificent viaduct. And this is the Crumlin Viaduct. The picture on the left is Sophia Loren, and I think it's Gregory Peck in a film called Arabesque. That is on the was filmed on the Crumlin just before it was demolished. And the picture on the right just shows the sorry state of all the ironwork that has been cut up and, you know, ready to be taken away. So, you know, Bennerley could conceivably have ended up like that. And closer to home, we had the bridge called the 40 Bridges at Orsworth. Again, that was demolished. Again, that would have been a, you know, a fantastic structure had that been saved. So basically, why is the viaduct still standing? Now, if you want to, you know, find out about anything, the first port of call is Wikipedia. And there's a bit of an urban myth in the Wikipedia. And it says that Bennerley Viaduct's wrought iron construction saved it from demolition. The demolition contractors who tendered for the contract to demolish the viaduct put forward amounts which were considered too high. The reason given for the cost was that wrought iron structures could not be cut up with an oxyacetylene torch and would have to be taken apart rivet by rivet. And so this kind of myth persists, that It was saved because it was made out of wrought iron. It was saved because they couldn't cut it up with an oxyacetylene torch. But all the other wrought iron viaducts, they were all demolished. We actually met somebody who put in a tender to demolish Bennerley Viaduct. He was going to use explosives, put it on its side, and then cut it up. And within the community, there was a level of indifference at the time. And if you look at the headlines of some of the newspapers, knock down this heap of scrap, the viaduct's a lump of scrap iron, last stand for the Eiffel Viaduct. And there's a section of the community and some councils wanted to see the viaduct demolished. But this stunning example of engineering, some groups said, no, this is the best example of a wrought iron viaduct. This is a fantastic example of British engineering. So organisations like the Archite Society, the Association for Industrial Archaeology, a number of different civic societies, a number of heritage groups, a number of history societies, they all kind of joined forces and put up opposition to getting this viaduct demolished. And it went to public inquiry. The two councils, Broxtowe and Erewash, they didn't want to see the viaduct demolished. And so it went to appeal, it went to public inquiry. And lots of those groups put forward the idea, this is back in 1980, that the viaduct should be repurposed as a place to walk and a place to cycle. And the inspector heard the arguments on both sides. He heard the arguments from, British Rail, how they didn't feel that they should have to pay for the upkeep of the viaduct because they had no further use for it. They wanted to see it demolished. But then you had the other groups of people saying, no, this viaduct is special. This viaduct should be repurposed as a walking and cycling trail. This viaduct is an absolutely valuable part of our industrial heritage. And Michael Heseltine did something quite unusual. Instead of making a decision saying, yes, you can demolish the viaduct or no, you can't, he said to the people that were opposing its demolition, put your money where your mouth is. Let's see a feasibility study to see if this viaduct can be repurposed into a walking and a cycling trail. And that was back in 1980. And following that public inquiry, the Bennerley Viaduct Preservation Trust were formed and established. And we are carrying on their work some 40 years later. So this idea to repurpose the viaduct and get it open for the public, it's not something that's just come about in the last few years. It's something which, the community or sections of the community have been fighting for a long time. And we are carrying on that work. So the people who actually saved Bennerley Viaduct, it's people that saved it. It was, every time I go walking in the Peak District, I think, thank God for the people that actually allowed us to have access. So the top picture is the people on the Kinder Trespass. Every time I go walking on the canal, I think, thank God for the Erewash Canal Preservation and Development Association. Again, a group of local people who got off the backsides in the 1960s and the 1970s, and they got their hands dirty and they kept that canal open. And the reason why we still got the viaduct is because of people, and people that saw the value of it and people that have fought to save it. Now, the Friends of Bennerley Viaduct, we came on the scene in 2015 to support, it was at that time, it was a Sustrans plan to reopen the viaduct. But at that stage, the viaduct looked uncared for, it was unloved, it was classed as being a structure at risk by English heritage. And we brought a group of kids from Orsworth School up to the viaduct. This is in 2016. And we asked them, we said, well, do you think it's worth opening this viaduct, to the public? It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to take a huge amount of effort. Do you think it's worth doing that? And every single one of them, they said, yeah, this is a fantastic structure. We love it. But what they said is it doesn't look looked after. and they said the whole area needs beautifying. And they were dead accurate with that, because the place just behind where those kids are, there was something like 80 cubic meters of fly tip material, which had just been dumped over the years. And so we took some inspiration from those kids who were all keen to see the viaduct opened and, repurposed and open to the public. So the Friends of Bennerley Viaduct were essentially reimagining how the Iron Giant should be, how we can open this Iron Viaduct as a walking and a cycling destination. So Stephen Millerchip did this, drawing for us, just to kind of show a different life which the viaduct could have. And it was our job to change the narrative. So the viaduct, instead of being a liability, we wanted the viaduct to be the biggest community asset that we have in the valley and give that viaduct a new future. And part of our work was to work with all kinds of organisations to form a coalition of the willing to make that vision happen, to get that viaduct reopened. And the local media were all very, 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 very supportive. Again, this is the Ilkeston paper, and they christened the viaduct, Cockmanay's Eiffel Tower. And the papers, the councils could all see that this viaduct was a real source of local pride and national pride, and it could be the focus for regenerating this part of the Erewash Valley. We were asked by I've forgotten the name of the organisation, it just slips my mind. We were asked if we could do some guided walks on these open days. So we offered to do some guided walks, and we thought we might get 20 or 30 people applying. And in our first year, we got something like 300 people applying to go on these guided walks. So it's on the Heritage Open Days. A huge demand for people wanting to learn about the viaduct. And we went around all kinds of different clubs and societies, spelling out what an asset that viaduct should be and how it's worth investing in that viaduct. This is in Kimberley Library, this presentation. Any event that was on, we'd be there with our gazebos, meeting people, explaining to them what we were trying to do. And everywhere we went, we got wall-to-wall support. There was very, very few people that said it's a waste of money. They were all saying, now this area needs something like Bennerley Viaduct that can be reopened, that we can all be proud of. And volunteers came forwards in droves. The picture on the left, this was some work that we did with an ecologist rescuing all the newts when all the brick piers were being repaired. Picture on the top right, volunteers planting hedges. The picture at the bottom right, this is what the underneath of the viaduct looked like when we started. It was impenetrable. So again, volunteers had to cut down a lot of this brash so that the engineers could get to the actual structure, to inspect it. So loads and loads and loads of volunteer inputs. Cleaning all the bricks on the pier bases. And this was in all those crumbling pier bases, fantastic hidey holes for great crested newts. So gentleman on the left, you can see in his glove, he's just picked out one of the great crested newts from the brickwork. And other teams of volunteers built what are called hibernacula, which are newt shelters. So it's a big hole about 6 foot by 2 foot, 6 foot long, 2 foot deep, 2 feet across, filled with sticks, rubble, soil, stones, loads of vegetation on the top, and then the newts just disappear and they can hibernate in these newt shelters. And this was another interesting volunteer job. When the western ramp was built, we had to we had to inspect the existing embankment for stability, and the only way we could do that was to get this 25-ton caterpillar up the football pitch. And you can see the gentleman in the middle with the arms folded. He's one of the managers of Ilkeston Town Football Club, petrified that his pitch is going to get chewed to pieces. So again, volunteers had this, we had a team in the morning and a team in the afternoon carrying these 8x4 wooden boards, so this 25-ton vehicle could move up the football pitch without damaging it in any shape or form. One of the breakthroughs that we had is there's an organisation called the World Monuments Fund. They're based in America, they're based in New York, and they work with local communities who are trying to protect their outstanding heritage. And every 2 years, they have a scheme called the World Monuments Watch, where 25 sites are chosen globally. And the World Monuments Fund work with those local communities to actually protect the heritage. And so we thought, well, this, we fit the bill for this, we'll put in an application. So we've put in an application, and then we, John Darlington, who's the chief exec of the World Monuments Fund, and Sarah on the left, they came up from London to have a look at the viaduct. This was in May. And again, we thought it's an absolute long shot, there'll be loads and loads of organisations applying. But then in September, we received a letter from the World Monuments Fund in New York saying that Bennerley Viaduct had been selected as a World Monument Site. And amongst the 25 sites that were chosen on a global basis, we had the monoliths in Easter Island. And again, the communities on Easter Island were trying to, save a lot of those monoliths from damage. We just had the big fire in Notre Dame Cathedral. So again, the communities in France were trying to, restore Notre Dame. The picture that's been cut off at the bottom, that's the Valley of the Incas in Peru. And the government there were wanting to build a large airstrip in the valley to get tourists in and out of Machu Picchu. And again, the local communities there were saying, no, this will absolutely, ruin and wreck our kind of, the heritage of the of our valley. And so we found ourselves in, humbled by the company that we were in. And all of a sudden, little Bennerley Viaduct became, a world treasure. And there was a global interest. If you look on our website at where all the hits were coming from, and you looked at our Facebook page at where all the hits were coming from, it was literally coming from all over the world. And with the status of being one of the World Monuments Watch sites, it started to bring in a lot of funding. A lot of funding, the World Monuments Fund did provide some funding, but it was also very catalytic in that other funding was drawn in. So we finally got to March 2020, and the first set of scaffolding went up. This was a really big moment for us. And no sooner had the scaffolding gone up than COVID came along and everything was locked down. So literally the scaffolding was up for a week, and then it all came back down again for COVID. But it did go back up. The work on Bennerley Viaduct, it wasn't a full restoration to get it open. It was, there were 3 phases to the work. The first phase was doing all the critical repairs to the brickwork and the ironwork. The second part of the project was building an access ramp on the Ilkeston side, on the western side, to allow people to get onto the deck. Previously, we used to use a kind of climbing rope to scramble up the steep mud banks, which you'd have to do to get on the top. And the third part of the project was to put a deck and a surface on and some steps at the eastern end. And the total cost of that project was £1.8 million. And we've got to say an absolutely huge thank you to the owners of the viaduct, Railway Paths, who led this, project. without them, we would not have the viaduct open. So we're absolutely indebted to Railway Paths, for the work that they did. So the ironwork repairs, there was a few missing rivets, missing bolts. There was a few loose cross members that had to be kind of put back in place. So the cradles were used to do that work. The brickwork there was a lot more serious work to be done with the brickwork. Picture on the left is on top of the viaduct at the Orsworth end, and you can see the abutment walls have been completely pushed down, and the only thing at the top was a rickety wooden fence. At the bottom, on the northern side, on the Orsworth side, which never gets the sun or rarely gets the sun, a lot of the bricks had popped. Water had got between the different courses of brickwork, frozen, and popped lots of the bricks. So there was extensive brickwork repairs to be done. And you can see the picture on the right, so you can see what the fencing used to be like at the top. The abutment walls that were pushed down had the original capping stones on them. So in the rubble at the bottom of the viaduct, they found all these capping stones. So the contractors got these capping stones, and the ones that were any good, they moved them back onto the viaduct so they could be used when the wall was rebuilt. And there's the new walls which were built with some of the old capping stones and some new ones. So again, that end of the viaduct looks absolutely fabulous. The next job was doing the ramp at the western end on the Ilkeston side. So all the vegetation was taken down on the south-facing bank. You can see in the left-hand picture the scramble that you used to have to go up to get on top of the viaduct. We only had a small amount of space to actually produce to make a zigzag ramp. So the bulldozers, the engineers came in, and in that small amount of space, something like 1,000 cubic meters of material were brought in. And you can see the ramp wiggling around, taking shape. I think the gradient is never more than anything 1:15. And that allows people like my mum to get up on top of the viaduct and to enjoy the views. Without that ramp, she wouldn't be able to get on the top, as would lots of people. So it's really important that the viaduct becomes accessible for the complete cross-section of society. And on that south-facing slope, it's all bare kind of soil in this particular image. We planted all that with wildflower seeds. And last year there was an absolute riot of colour there. Lots of bees, lots of butterflies. And again, there's going to be more seeds planted this spring so that that south-facing bank will be, it will look absolutely beautiful like this. And the final part of the project was putting the deck on. So all the ballast had to be removed from the deck of the viaduct. The ballast was all contaminated. That had to be removed and taken off. The decks were hoisted up and put on to the viaduct. And here they are putting the final touches, putting the railway sleepers on. And steps at the eastern end, at the Orsworth end of the viaduct. And then in January last year, Railway Paths and the Railway Heritage Trust put a tweet out saying the viaduct will be open the following day. And so we got this tweet and we kind of put it out through our social media system. And the following day, people came from everywhere. There were literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that came down to see the viaduct. There'd been no public access on the top for 54 years, and now it was open. And so we had runners coming, we had cyclists, we had walkers, we had people just coming up to take photographs. And all of a sudden, we created this wonderful public space, a wonderful amenity for the community, and a place for people to visit, a place for people to enjoy. And this is Alresworth Primary School. Head teacher, who's also one of the trustees, or deputy head teacher and one of the trustees, he brought 200 children down to the viaduct, got his piece of chalk out, wrote APS, and I'm just going to, this is a movie clip. So, right, can you see them all waving? So, which is fabulous. And then Kate did for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Kate came down with lots of kids from Granby School, and they did a big ER on the viaduct, and that got some national publicity. So all these kids will remember these moments. We're really important to, engage the, the local children in the local schools, because they're the future custodians of this structure. And I think the reason we've been successful is I call it the Bennerley Viaduct tandem. And at the back, you got the FOBV and the community. They're kind of driving and pushing this project forwards. And at the front of the tandem, we used to have, railway paths. I mean, who were, absolutely brilliant leading the project. And we had organisations like the World Monuments Fund, different stakeholder groups, MPs, councils, all pulling in the same direction to actually get this viaduct open. And when you get whole groups of people and organisations and businesses pulling in the same direction, amazing things start to happen. And the funders decided that this was a project that was actually worth investing in. And so this £1.8 million came in from a whole variety of different sources. And we're completely indebted to those funders. So, Historic England, the Railway Heritage Trust, Broxton Borough Council, the World Monuments Fund, the Heritage Lottery, Railway Paths, and all these other organisations, Severn Trent, all these trusts, all invested to get this viaduct open. And again, we are indebted to those organisations for having the belief in this particular project. So the viaduct was open. We also put in a further bid to the Heritage Lottery for a project called Bridging the Gap, which Rebecca was mentioning at the beginning. And we've managed to take on, Rebecca, who's managing the project, Kate, who's doing the community engagement, and Rick, who is the ranger doing lots of the practical tasks underneath the viaduct. And this is to prepare the project for the next stage of its development, to maintain that momentum within the community and to put the case forwards for, further development and improvements at the viaduct. Another moment, historic moment, took place in 2022, and the ownership or the custodianship of the viaduct came back to the community. And the Friends of Bennerley Viaduct took out a 99-year lease on the structure for £1. And that allows the Friends to be able to apply for funding to further develop what is on the viaduct and to develop the structure. But being the community custodians of the viaduct, it entails lots and lots of responsibility. And we're quite aware of what we have taken on. But again, it's an honour to take on this fabulous structure. And it's nice to know that it's in the hands of the community. And in August, we had an official opening ceremony. There were 2 ribbon cutting ceremonies, one at the Derbyshire end, which is here, and then there was another one at the Nottinghamshire end, and then everybody piled into the middle of the viaduct with the TV crews, with the mayors, the MPs, different dignitaries, with the Lord Lieutenants of Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire, and with the brass band. That was a dream for me, getting that viaduct open, having an opening ceremony like this, having a brass band playing music on the viaduct. It was absolutely fantastic, and it was a real testimony to the work that Rebecca and Kate and Rick and lots of the volunteers did to make this day so successful. And that was the end of a particular chapter. But as one chapter finishes, a new chapter opens. And the next chapter is about improving the access to the viaduct, getting some facilities down at the viaduct and maintaining that level of community engagement. So we have these lovely looking steps at the moment, but those lovely looking steps prevent lots and lots of people getting to the top. You have people that go up the Erewash Canal on the mobility scooters, they get onto the top of the ramp and they can go as far as the top, and that's it, they can't go any further. And equally, lots of people can't get up these steps. And for people wheeling their bikes down the steps, we've had one or two people that have overbalanced, and it would be so much better to have a ramp at this side of the viaduct as well. So we desperately want to improve the access so that all members of the community can get across from one side of the viaduct to the other. We'd also like some facilities there. I mean, these are three of our fantastic volunteers, Linda, Kat and Dawn, and we had a pop-up cafe on New Year's Day, and it was heaving with people. But to enable people to have the coffee, we had to have Rick with his trolley going up and down the canal, getting flasks of hot water. And I think we had Trevor and Richard in Cotmanay who had kettles on the go all day, boiling up the hot water. And it'd be so lovely to have a place where people can come and go to the toilet and have a cup of tea and have a piece of cake. And again, somewhere where there's facilities that enables more people to access it. The viaduct is in the middle of what is called the Erewash Valley Trail, which follows the lines of both the Erewash Canal and the Nottingham Canal. And the viaduct joins up both of those kind of canals. So it's connected into the walking network in this north-south direction. But there's a bigger picture, which is the line of the old Great Northern Greenway, or the line of the old Great Northern Railway, or the Friargate line, which went from Derby to Nottingham. Now, the blue bit in the middle, that is Bennerley Viaduct. The green bits are parts of the Great Northern Greenway which have been completed. The red dashed bits are bits that are incomplete. And we've often thought that if Bennerley Viaduct was open, that would give the incentive for both Derbyshire and for Nottinghamshire to complete their kind of the respective work on their sides. So we could have traffic-free walking and cycling all the way from Derby to Nottingham. And what's particularly important, in the top, right at the top, there is by Kimberley, where it says crossing Shiloh Way. If you go to just to the right, there's a population there, and that's Kimberley. And Kimberley have submitted as part of their levelling up bid plans to improve the cycling network in and around Kimberley. And they were lucky, they were very fortunate, they put in a good bid, Kimberley Town Council, Broxton Borough Council, Darren Henry, and they put in this bid called Kimberley Means Business. And part of that successful bid allows us to construct the Eastern Ramp and to improve the cycling facilities and the cycling network that links up Kimberley, Eastwood, Giltbrook with the Phoenix the Phoenix Park tram stop. And also the funding to construct a ramp at the eastern end of the viaduct. And again, this will make the viaduct much more attractive for people to come and visit. And it will also allow people to, walk, to cycle for work purposes, for leisure purposes, and encourage more and more people to come to this area. So it was a successful bid. And this is the work which we are, the Friends group, and particularly the trustees, are working really hard on this to take this forward. It's a complicated piece of work, but it's their job. They are going to be taking this forwards. And so over the next couple of years, we will be seeing the ramp being built at on the Orsworth end of the viaduct, so people can do a nice circuit, which will be, a real achievement. So I'm coming to an end now. So this is my final slide. So the project is about repurposing this viaduct and giving it a life into the 21st century and beyond. It had its life between 1878 and 1968, carrying coal, but it's got a new life now. And it's a heritage-led regeneration project that spins off, and it has all kinds of benefits to everybody who lives locally, but also it has benefits for people who are coming for a long, long way to see the viaduct. You stop and ask people at the viaduct now, where are you from? People are coming from all over the country to see it. And the most important thing about this project, as far as I'm concerned, it's a community-owned and a community-driven project, and that makes it quite unique. And I've been, working on the project now for about 6 years. You're constantly inspired by the people around you who are working so hard, who have this vision and are working so hard to make things happen. In Cotmanay School today, it wasn't a case of, well, we think you should do this and we think you should do that. It was a case of, we'll do this for you. Do you need some nesting boxes for underneath the viaduct? We'll make some for you. We'll make some back boxes for you. Anything else that we can do. And this is coming from the kids who are going to be the future custodians of this viaduct. And it's that community ownership of the project which makes it such a special, project to be involved in. So I'd like to thank you all for listening. I'm going to look at some of the questions and answers. Do you want to come in, Rebecca? Or?
Yep. Hello. Thank you, Kieran. I should say it's incredibly difficult talking to a screen and not having any reactions from anybody. So well done. I'm sure you're actually getting a round of applause from everybody in the room. I want to just start with a very quick apology to everybody. The chat wasn't working. So the Q&A is working, but the chat wasn't. I don't know why that is. We'll look at our Zoom settings for next time. But thank you for the people that alerted me to it in the Q&A while we were going. So a few questions were coming, Kieran. Do you want me to ask you them so you can answer them, sort of interview style?
I can see this one here. I was told the viaduct from the Birkins. I was told the viaduct was engineered by the Germans and built by them. Again, we've heard this rumour that it was German prisoners of war that built the viaduct, but I don't understand why there would be German prisoners of war in the 1870s. But all the viaduct was actually built by a company called Eastwood and Swingler, which was a Derby-based company. They had the contract to build the line. They also built part of the Settle in Carlisle. So it was built very much with local labour. It wasn't, I don't know where that myth has sprung up, but I've heard it in lots of different places that it was built by prisoners of war. But no, it was built by a Derby-based company called not Eastwood and Swingler. Eastwood and Swingler, they made the actual viaduct. It was well, remember it in a minute. I'm sorry, it's gone. Right. I was the lady at the front centre of the guided walk. I was fascinated with the structure. I have been again recently. Amazing work. Thank you all. Right. Okay. That's lovely, and I'm glad you you enjoy it when you come. Are there any plans to reopen any more of the Derbyshire extension to walkers and cyclists to make the viaduct part of a longer trail or commuter route from Nottingham to Derby? Right, we would love that to happen. I mean, basically what is happening with the Great Northern Greenway, it's being done section by section. And we've always felt that once the viaduct was open, that will give the impetus to both the Derbyshire side and the Nottinghamshire side to complete their sections. So the Friends of Bennerley Viaduct won't be doing that, but organisations like, you know, Erewash Borough Council, Derbyshire County Council, possibly Sustrans, they may get involved in, you know, in developing the Great Northern Greenway and getting that finished. It'd be fabulous if that could happen. And the viaduct would then be the centrepiece, you know, of these local walking and cycling routes. Right, Anita, are there any plans to have information points along the viaduct to tell you about its history, or are there already some? There's two at the moment. There's one at the car park at Newton's Lane and there's one on the Nottingham Canal. There's going to be some that are put underneath the viaduct and they are being built at the moment, but the flavour to those ones are primarily about the wildlife and the nature that you can see. But yeah, there are plans and proposals to you know, put more information points there. You want to say anything about that, Rebecca?
Yeah, I thought I'd just hop in on that one a little bit. So part of our lottery funding is to look at our signage, and that's partly the signs that help you find your way around, but it's also the signs that tell you what there is to know. The other exciting thing that's happening is we're working with a company called Terra Measurement, who are doing a lot of 3D scanning of the viaduct. So there'll be a complete 3D scan of it. And you'll be able to look at that through your phone, and it won't just be or at home on a laptop or any other computer, and it won't just be a 3D scan. It'll also have information points at key parts of the viaduct as you look around that you'll be able to click on. And what we're going to do is have QR codes at the viaduct, so you can scan those. They'll link you straight through to that information on there as well. So it's going to be a little bit of good old-fashioned information points when you're there, but then a lot more information that you can get hold of as well from home or while you're still visiting. So yes, watch this space as we go forwards, really.
Peter, thank you very much. I'd forgotten the name of the company that actually constructed the viaduct. It was Benton and Woody Wiss, again a Derby-based company. Jose, we visited the viaduct and we're really impressed. So fantastic, you know. I hope you come up again at some stage. It's lovely that people are enjoying the viaduct. Ronald Gordon, thank you for the informative talk. It's good that people like me living in Sussex can take part. Fantastic. It's nice to get the word out down south. Anonymous attendee, thank you for this interesting conference. I trust other members of our twinning clubs, Shallons and Champagne, Ilkeston, have been listening too, and we'll have an exchange about it in our next meeting. Fantastic. We do have Ilkeston are twinned with Shallons and Champagne, and we've had you know, French groups coming to see the viaduct, which again, it's lovely. We've had people from all over coming to see the viaduct. New Year, I brought 4 Americans to see the viaduct. We've seen people from Canada, I've seen people from Australia on the viaduct. It's, you know, people are coming from lots of different places.
It's worth saying, Kieran, just in this very online talk, there's somebody from the Netherlands and a couple of people from France. So even now we've got an international audience.
Fantastic. Thank you, very interesting. I love walking on the viaduct, so do I. That's brilliant, Helen. Is there a signed route from Ilkeston station, please?
We're working on it, is the answer, because we don't own all of the land ourselves. So there are a couple of places where you can pick up signs, but there's not at the moment a fully signed route. But we are talking to the various people who would have to put signs up to make that happen. So it's another one of sort of watch this space, really. But we're going to do our best with that one.
Right, good. John Page, are there any plans to provide parking nearby? There's parking at the moment, but it's very limited, particularly at weekends. And so part of the levelling up bid will be to provide some parking, on the site. So yes, that is going to happen, or that should be happening, within the next couple of years. I think what happened was, we got the viaduct open, and then we realised we had this venue that didn't have any facilities that came with it, and certainly at the beginning, all the local car parks were just completely full, and there was people parking, all over the place. It's quietened down a little bit now, but no, there'll be plans to have some parking, and there'll also be, that will be, partly combined with having some kind of, cafe facility for people to, enjoy.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying really the sort of there's the three things, the sort of trinity of what the viaduct needs are sort of toilets, a cafe and car parking that we're very, very aware of, and it's simply a case of raising the money, getting the permission from the right landowners, getting the access right. So it's not an easy picture, but we're absolutely working towards those things, and it's sort of a bit of a jigsaw of putting that all together, but the levelling up money will really help us with that. I think that's all the questions. Does anybody else want to type any questions before we end? Oh, there's one.
My granddad used to tell of troops being stationed there to prevent Zeppelins from dropping bombs when they failed to bomb Stanton. Do you have any photographs of this? January the 31st, 1916, there was a Zeppelin raid, and there was a bomb that was dropped fairly close to the viaduct, and there's still one or two shrapnel hot marks in the piers at the Ilkeston end. We don't have any photographs of the Zeppelins dropping bombs on the viaduct, but there are lots of photographs of the Zeppelin L20 in different places. There's some pictures of when it finally came to its end in a fjord in Norway. It was on another bombing mission, I think, to the northeast, and it got blown well off course, and it ended up in Norway in a fjord. And Captain Stabbert, who was the captain, he was arrested and he was put in jail for, I think, 6 or 7 months in Norway, but he escaped. And then he had a final bombing mission, and he was shot down in France eventually. So, but we don't have any photographs of the troops being stationed there to prevent the bombs dropping. If any of you, there's a talk which is about the Zeppelins by what's it, Stephen, he's an Ilkeston lad, I've forgotten his name. But he'd be another person that would be really good to do a talk on the East Midland bombing raid, and he could, it's a fantastic story about how all these Zeppelins came over, from Germany in the First World War, thinking they were bombing Sheffield, Manchester, and Liverpool, and they got lost in the fog over Lincolnshire, and when they saw the plumes of flames coming out of Bennerley Ironworks, they thought they were in Sheffield, and they dropped the bombs. Stephen Flinders. So if ever he's doing any talks locally, it's absolutely worth going to see. Yeah.
I think just on the photographs as well, one thing I think it's worth adding is we're constantly trying to find new photographs and collecting new images and things. We are trying to start an archive, but the nature of the viaduct, for so long, it was just sort of an abandoned structure that a lot of the photographs are kind of in boxes under people's beds and things like that. So if you do happen to come across photographs, please get in touch with us, because we're always trying to expand that. And one part of our project is actually to write a book about the viaduct, which another one of our volunteers, Jeff, is currently collecting all of the information for. So we're always keen to find new archives, new photographs, and all of that sort of thing. So it's just worth throwing that in there, I think. Oh, we've got another one there.
Thank you very much. Nottingham born, but bred in Newcastle upon Tyne and Latley Wakefield. Love coming back home and love seeing the viaduct from the train. Fantastic. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to say we're going to wrap up now because we're already 4 minutes over 7, which is when we said we'd end. But thank you everybody for the questions. Kieran, is there anything you want to say before I kind of sign us off?
No, just thank you to everybody for tuning in, and I hope people have enjoyed it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to echo that as well and say thank you everybody for coming. It's brilliant to have such a good turnout for our first online talk. We're definitely planning on doing more of these. We're going to aim for one every other month to start with while we're trying this out as a new thing. So in April we're going to have, as Kieran mentioned, Dr. Dave Gent, who is one of the country's leading experts in wrought iron bridge engineering. So that should be a really good one. Watch out for the information for that one when we share it. We'll share it via the newsletter, the website, and via social media. So you should be able to see when that's coming up. If there's anyone here that's not already one of our friends or sort of involved in the organisation, please do head over to our website, which is www.bennerleyviaduct.org.uk. There's loads of information on there. We're always looking for volunteers to join us. We're always looking for new members. That's where we put our appeals for donations, and it's where we put all of our news as well. So so please do head over there and sort of check out what we're doing as well. That would be fantastic. And we've got a couple more thank yous in the talks, Kieran, so in the questions there. So welcome, yep. Kieran. Thank you too, Kieran, for being the inaugural host of one of our online talks.
Right, thank you.
And with that, I'm going to say good night, everybody. Thank you all for joining us.
Okay, yeah, bye.